In this episode of Vibe Gardening Informed Edition, we're going to be doing our first indoor episode. We're going to go into preparing for indoor gardening using grow lights. So, like a lot of you, I probably have probably done is I used shop lights to germinate seeds from the start. And I always wondered, grow lights, do I need them? Are they a scam or are they a necessity? So in this episode, we're going to go full into it. So with that said, here we go. So guys, we've been here before. This is my underground basement setup for germinating seeds. I've shown it once already in my previous episode about how I aced tomato germination this year. And so this right here is my LED shop light setup. So we're going to go a little bit into what LED shop light is and why is it cheaper and sort of the little bit of science what's going on. So this LED shop light here, I have two 70-watt, not equivalent, but actual 70-watt shop lights for combined of 140 watts of output. So one thing that makes shop light extremely cheap and why they're significantly cheaper than grow light is that they don't guarantee you the spectrum of the light that comes in. Because when you look at light, sure everyone has learned in grade school that when you put a white light, sunlight, through a prism, it goes into the rainbow colors, a whole entire visible spectrum that we can see and probably more, right? So in reality here is plants, they need the light too. And what they do is when that white light expands out, it needs a very particular spectrum of light that it can use, a certain wavelength. This is what they call PAR, or photosynthetically active range. What this does is that it basically specifies the range of wavelength of light that a plant need to grow. And what's happening here is that with this light coming from the shop light, it is very bright. It specifies lumens, which is how much total light it emits. Now that's different from lux, which is at that particular point how bright it is. But for total lumens it produces, it isn't always guaranteed to be within the PAR or the PAR wavelength, which I'll show on the screen here is actually what the wavelength of what the plants need. So even though this might be bright and technically very bright, not all the brightness that you're getting here will be available for plants to do photosynthesis. So that's the main difference of the shop light. And the shop light, a lot of times you're stuck with a particular color of the light. Now the color is interesting. The color of it is really measured in kelvins, or which is kind of the scientific measurement of heat. And what it does here is that it really measures this, the color of when metal is heated with a certain Kelvin. I forgot which metal it uses as a standard, but the hotter the metal gets, the more blue it gets. So the lower the Kelvin, the more orange yellowish it gets. So this is kind of the warmness of the light we're talking about. So in this case, this light is actually dynamic, which makes it a little bit more expensive. That has at least 4, if not more, settings of Kelvin it can go for. So it can go from anywhere, I think, from 4,500 all the way up to 6,500 Kelvin. And that is nice because that's kind of like the range of which what makes plants grow. But in majority of the case, according to these university extension studies that I'll link below, they show that shop light is actually amazing at growing indoor green leafy plants. So for example, for germinating seeds from seed to going outdoors in the springtime, right before you take them outdoors. That's the best, it's extremely effective for using that. And for in my case, in the winter, I grow leafy greens, like salad greens, like lettuce, arugula, and such. Those are the best under this type of lighting system. But if you're going to do a lot more, you're not guaranteed. So in the next clip, we're going to go into looking at a grow light and what makes that special. So here in my office, as you can see here, I have a hydroponic system, which I'm not going to really go into in depth in this episode, in which I'll probably go into more on hydroponic later on. But I have grow lights here dedicated to this basil parsley monstrosity here. And these are legit grow lights. And with the hydroponic system, they always come with specific grow lights here. And one of the things about grow light is that it's significantly more expensive because it guarantees you that all the entirety of the wattage being used for the lighting is being dedicated to the PAR, or the photosynthetically active range of lighting. So in this case here, each one of these, generally speaking, will be able to transition between the different growth stage of a plant. So for example, right now, this is because I'm basically focusing on leafy green. It is on the wider side, the cooler side of, I mean the higher side of the color temperature here. So you can, as you can see here, I am rotating. So this is more of a reddish light here, and this is more of a, and that was more white. This is more red. I have not seen anything but white light because I'm growing leafy greens here. So you can see you can cycle through these different colors for the different needs of your plants as they go through stage. Where in my case, I really don't have different stages. I really just have leafy stage for what I'm doing here. Since I'm just basically, I want to keep up my herbs because of all the cooking I do. I want to make sure I have fresh herbs all the time. So really, there's a big price hike for you to be able to get this very focused growing light range. So it's really up to you. Like, is it worth it for you to get grow lights? So now that should give you a very good idea of the basics about the difference between LED grow light versus LED shop light. Now with shop light, you want to make sure you use LED because the temperature, actual physical temperature in Fahrenheit and Celsius, does not get too high, which can become a big problem for plants. As they get closer, it can literally burn the leaves. So you want to use LED. So these are actually very energy efficient, but in the end, you have to really ask yourself, what are you actually planning to grow here? If you're just growing to germinate seeds and getting it ready for coming spring, and if you're only growing leafy greens like herbs, salad, lettuce greens, anything that's only in its leaf stage, then you should really consider just using LED shop lights, because you don't need the full spectrum of a grow light or be able to change the color of the lights. But now, if you're going to be growing fruits like tomato or anything like that, you really should consider getting yourself a dedicated grow light because you cannot achieve those reddish color as you will need for growing those things indoors. So I hope that helps and help you determine if the price you want to spend on those things are worth it. And also keep in mind ability to control timing. Are they going to be worth it for be able to control with your Wi-Fi outlets, or are they going to have their own control that if you get a power outage, you will be completely out of sync with your timing? So with that said, I hope that's going to help you get going with your journey with indoor planting for the winter and prepare for next spring. So keep gardening and vibing. See you next time.